Welcome to the Words of Wisdom podcast. This is the place to be to raise the consciousness within in order to create a life and business of ease, flow, and freedom. This podcast offers inspiring stories, strategies, and special guests to help you become your most aligned self. I am Minerva Maharaj, a former NBA Toronto Raptors dancer turned ICF accredited spiritual life coach, founder of Goddess of Wisdom Spiritual Life Coaching, and Star Seed Academy coach training. My soul's mission is to show you the impossible is truly possible. Thank you so much for joining me here today. Let's get to awakening your soul's wisdom. Welcome to the Words of Wisdom podcast. I'm your host, Minerva Maharaj. Thank you all for joining me here today. Today, what I want to talk about is I'm just going to riff and just flow on this topic because I'm seeing it come up a lot, especially with my private clients and my students. A lot of the people that I work with, and they are my soulmate clients. I love them. They speak to my soul because I've been there in terms of how we achieve our goals. And I want to offer a new way, a new approach to achieving our goals. And often the way that we approach our goals is from a place of working harder. What else can I do? Let's course correct. What am I doing wrong? Let me do it differently. It's a lot of do, and thinking and looking outside of us and getting those resources and new guidance in order to get to where we want to be, versus coming from a place of feeling, trusting, knowing, intuition, and flow. And so the difference there is coming from toxic masculine versus coming from the divine masculine, as well as from the wounded feminine and coming from a place of the divine feminine. So what does it look like to come from a place of divine masculine, to take action from a divine place, to think from a more aligned, loving space that will therefore help us achieve our goals, as well as what would it look like if we were to show up from our divine feminine? Because when you show up in the divine masculine and divine feminine, that's where you create with more ease and flow. The feminine is about creation and manifestation, and the masculine is about carrying out and doing and carrying out that mission. So when we combine the divine masculine and feminine, that's where you have ease and flow. So that's what I want to talk about with you today. So I have 3 approaches here to help you start creating from the divine masculine and divine feminine. And when you do, you start creating with more ease and flow. I do want to clarify what I said earlier in terms of coming from the masculine. There's nothing wrong with course correcting and receiving support and learning to do things differently. What I was trying to convey there is that often we are coming from a wounded masculine place when we are trying to do things with force, with judgment, with working harder, doing more because it's not enough. So there's this underlining tone that comes from the wounded masculine, from the toxic masculine messaging that's out there that you need to work harder. You need to do more. It's not enough, and don't stop until you get there. And that is a very toxic message and underlining energy that really is just going to repel you from the success and the outcomes that you do want, versus coming from a more divine masculine space of consciousness, of mission, of purpose, of clarity, and doing from a place of empowerment versus from a place of toxic energy. So I'm going to go into that a little bit more. So I just wanted to clarify that. So here I have for you 3 approaches on how to start creating with more ease and flow. And in other words, start creating from the divine masculine and divine feminine versus from the wounded masculine and feminine. When you are creating from the wounded masculine and feminine, it feels like you're running in mud. It just feels like you're just moving further and further away. So I'm offering you these 3 different approaches. They kind of intertwine, but I think they're worth looking at separately. So you can choose just one approach to start fine-tuning your energy and your approach to achieving your desired outcomes. Or you can do all 3 combined. So let's get to it. So my first approach to create from the divine masculine and feminine is coming from flow versus force. So force versus flow. So I'm going to talk about both. So when we're coming from force, as I mentioned earlier, that is coming from the wounded masculine, working harder, more aggressive, not doing enough. So therefore, I must do more. And there's just this hardness, this aggressiveness, this forceful, hard energy that is so entwined in our society and in different cultures about working in order to get success, working harder in order to succeed, in order to be wealthy, in order to be better and greater. And so that forceful energy normally feels really tight, heavy, it's draining. You really do lead to burnout. And honestly, it just takes you further away from the success and the desired outcomes that you do want. Because think about it, if it did work, you would be there already. And I see a lot of my students and my private clients say, well, I'm working so hard. What more can I do? Or I need to take another course. I need to pay for this. I need to do more. I need to add more to my schedule, when most of the time they need to do less. And so that then now brings me to the opposite approach, which is flow. Coming from flow is coming from the divine feminine. And not to say we need to cancel out the masculine at all. I'm not saying that at all. It just needs to come back into balance. So introducing more of the divine feminine, and this may take some tweaking. It's not going to feel easy at first because you're so used to operating in the wounded masculine. Now, if you introduce a little bit of the divine feminine, this is you coming from a place of feeling, from energy, from flow, that nurturing, healing, softer energy than the aggressive, forceful energy that you may have been programmed to come from. So when you're coming from flow, you're really tuning into, how am I feeling? What feels good to my body right now? What is my body saying about this opportunity? What is my energy saying about this person? What would feel intuitively good for me right now? What would be nurturing? How can I approach clients, money, my studies from a place of more ease? How can I just flow without knowing every little step along the way in order to quote unquote succeed? So it's really dropping into flow and feeling in your body, in your energy field, and just what feels good. What feels good to your soul, your spirit, your body, your energy field. And when you're in more flow, it feels lighter than the old contracted, heavy way of being. Coming from a place of what lights you up, what expands your energy. Even though it may not make sense to the mind, you are in this approach, you're coming from flow. And that it doesn't make sense to take a day off, but it feels good to take a day off. It doesn't make sense to say no to an additional client, even though you already have 5 clients, but you really wanted that 6th client. But in your body, 5 just feels enough. It feels correct. It feels aligned for you. So some examples of that in terms of flow, and the more I lean into flow, the more my business flows, the more my money flows, the more everything else in my life flows. And that looks like, for me, blocking time off, taking that extra time in the morning for my embodiment time, for my alignment time, where I just meditate, or I go for a walk, or I do both. I just do what feels good, whatever it takes for me to get into flow, to get into alignment to the higher energy, a higher vibration. It also means, taking time off in the middle of the day. It means just working with a select few clients. It means saying no to certain opportunities that doesn't feel good. And for me, a core life value of mine is freedom. It's ease and flow. It's time and space. That's like more than one. But to me, it encapsulates that energy of just freedom and flow. That's really what it comes down to. So that means integrating it into my schedule. And if a client's like, well, I can you do weekends? I'm not available on weekends, because that doesn't feel flow. Like, it doesn't feel easy for me. And that's my time to really have freedom in other areas of my life, with family, in my personal life as well. And so it's about integrating that flow in everyday life, even though it doesn't make sense to society, your bosses, or your family. It's integrating flow in your everyday, in your schedule, in your morning, in the middle of your workday, on the weekends. Because if you choose the other way of force, you're going to get drained, you're going to get burnt out, and you're just going to be stressed out, and you're just creating from that place, when really, end of the day, what it is you want to create, whether it's in your relationships, in your career, in your finances, it is not going to come from a place of force. You can create from a place of force, but it's not going to be fulfilling, and it's not going to feel as free. So coming from a place of flow versus force. So choosing flow, tuning into your body, tuning into your energy field, and tuning into what feels light versus what feels heavy and constricted. It's going to take some tweaking, but it is possible, because the more you lean into flow, the more you're going to see things flow in your life, and it's going to be easier to choose from flow, and you're going to feel that distinction when you choose from a place of force. So that is approach number 1, flow versus force. My approach number 2 is coming from consciousness versus unconsciousness. Consciousness versus unconsciousness. When we're coming from consciousness, we're coming from the divine masculine. The divine masculine is present, it's grounded, it is conscious, it is aware. And coming from that approach, in every moment of your life, I have this 10-second rule that I learned from the book, Money Isn't the Problem, You Are, by Gary M. Douglas, one of my favorite books. And there's a 10-second rule. I don't know if he calls it a 10-second rule, but I call it a 10-second rule of you have 10 seconds to choose, because that's all you really can grasp your hand on right now. You don't know what's going to happen the next hour or tomorrow, and so on and so forth. You have 10 seconds to choose, but choose consciously. So what would feel good right now? Choosing consciously, or I see myself doing this right now, even if I go into the toxic masculine, even if I go into a heavier place, being conscious in just 10-second increments, and being conscious of how you are feeling, how you are thinking, who you are being in those 10 seconds. And then in the next 10 seconds, you can choose who you want to be. So if you only have 10 seconds, what would you choose? Are you choosing from a place of consciousness, or are you choosing from a place of unconsciousness? And of course, we all have unconscious patternings in our mindset, within our beliefs, with our needs, within our emotions, and the way we behave, the way we operate. And so in the unconscious, when we operate from the unconscious, we operate from those limiting beliefs, those behaviors, those patterns, those habits that don't serve us. We come from a very reactive place. We come from a fear-based place. We come from the ego self. And we make decisions often based on lack and fear, versus making decisions from flow, from lightness, from spirit, what feels expansive and free. So taking those 10 seconds and ask yourself, what's a conscious choice I can make? Am I coming from the conscious or unconscious right now? So when you are choosing to come from a place of consciousness, you're coming from the divine masculine and the divine feminine, because you're bringing awareness to how I'm feeling, what I'm doing, what intuitively is coming up, what is my spirit saying, what's my soul need right now. Versus from the unconscious is very reactive, it's fear-based, it's lack-based, it's ego-based, and it's in response to fear. Well, I guess I should take on these extra hours. I guess I should take on this client even though it doesn't feel good. I'm not going to spend this money because I'm not going to have any more. Or maybe I'm going to spend this on this course or this program or whatever out of a place of fear versus a place of love, a place of consciousness. So taking those 10 seconds and asking yourself, how can I respond consciously right now? Or who am I choosing to be in this moment, and choose from a conscious place? So that is number 2. My third approach is mind versus energy, or you can switch it around, energy versus mind, doesn't matter. But Mind versus energy. So this is another approach that will help you fine tune whether you're coming from the wounded or divine masculine and feminine. Now, the wounded part of us often comes from the mind. We let the mind lead versus the energy to lead. And what happens is the mind often does what we have programmed it to do. And often it's operating in an unconscious part of us, from the subconscious. And it's operating from limiting beliefs, from old systems, from rules, from belief systems of other people that's been programmed into us, that's happened unconsciously for years. And we're operating from a place that doesn't serve us anymore. And when we let the mind lead, let logic lead, it's going to tell you, it's going to protect you. It's going to tell you everything is scary. It's going to try to prevent you from spending or doing something with someone or not be with this person or whatever it is. It's going to convince you to do. But often, not always, until you program it consciously, the mind is going to operate from the unconscious. And the mind is limited versus I find energy is just limitless. It's just expansive. So when you're often making a decision from the mind, it's coming from a place of force and lack. You got to do more. Logically, it makes sense to take on this client. Logically, it makes sense to say yes to this job, even though it may not feel good to your body, to your energy field. And then that's the opposite. Start tuning in. And this is how you can start bringing it into balance from the wounded to the divine masculine and feminine, is tuning into your energy. How does this feel for you? How does it feel in your body? How expansive does it make you feel? Or how limited does this make you feel? So when you actually allow the energy to lead, the mind will follow. I truly believe that, because again, the mind will do what you tell it to do. And the only reason it's telling you what it's telling you right now is because you've programmed it for years, consciously and subconsciously, through your environment, through family, through society, through culture, to tell you what is acceptable and what you should do. And a lot of the programming around money and career and success, a lot comes from around us, our family, society, schools, media. What is success? Work harder. You're not successful until you have a certain amount of money. You need to work more. You're not successful unless you have a big house. You should get married at a certain time. You should have so many kids. Those are outside conditioning. That's other people's rules and definitions of what success is. But when you start tuning in and shedding, first of all, shedding the unconscious, shedding and bringing to awareness to the surface, what are the old operating systems that are so outdated and not aligned to you, and what doesn't feel good to your body and not helping contribute to the life you really do want to create, of ease, of flow, of freedom, of abundance. You need to start shedding what's going on and bringing to the surface what's going on in the subconscious. And that's often a lot operating in the background of our mind. Now, when you start tuning into your energy field, the energy is going to tell you what is correct for you. It's going to take some time to tune into this, but things such as meditation, being in nature, being by yourself sometimes will start decluttering and cleansing and detoxifying from the toxic, wounded messaging and energies around you. So having a practice to tune into your energy and then trusting your energy, leaning into that more, will make it stronger. I make a lot of my decisions now based on my energy. Does this make me feel expansive or contracted? I really do. And it may sound so simple, it might sound silly to some, but it works for me. And almost everything. I can't think of anything that I don't make decisions on based on energy, on whether I should take on a client. Should I offer this course? Should I say yes to this opportunity? Should I say yes to being a podcast guest? Should I say yes to being part of the summit? If in the mind of me, like, yeah, great opportunity. Why not? This is an opportunity to expose yourself, to get, possibly more clients. And here's an opportunity for money. If it may say yes in the mind, but if it doesn't say yes in the energy field, I say no to it. And all the time, I'm not even gonna say majority of the time, all the time when I do listen to that energy, even though it doesn't make sense to the mind, it always leads me the right way. And that does take time. It takes fine tuning to really cleanse and detoxify from the energies that are not yours. But when you really get to a place where you're tuned into your energy and it's just your energy speaking to you, it will always lead you the right way. And when something feels expansive and light for me, even though it doesn't make sense in the mind, like, how am I going to do this? What are all the steps involved? What about the people? I.e., Starseed Academy, my energy was telling me to leave an old opportunity, teaching opportunity, and something was coming. I didn't even know what that something was yet, but I was going to be taken care of on every level, mentally, emotionally, financially, spiritually, and it's just going to lead to something more. It just felt expansive, light, and free, and I followed that. And a few months later, huge download, Starseed Academy came to be, and we are now in the first cohort. We are in like class 10 at this point of recording. And when I look back at this year, it's only June at the day I record this podcast. When I think about, really, the download came in January, now it's June, it's only 6 months into the year, and how much has unfolded. I didn't know all of this last November, when I was getting the downloads and the intuitive feels, you need to leave this opportunity. It just felt so contracted, the old opportunity, that I had to leave. And by doing that, by following the energy, my mind followed. Everything else followed. The support, the resources, the students, the opportunity, everything. And it just keeps expanding. So that's where I feel like you start tuning into your energy. You start choosing, therefore, to operate from the divine masculine and feminine. It's only going to lead you to more. It's only going to lead you to more ease and flow. So those are my 3 approaches. I really hope this helps you. Let me know by taking a screenshot and tagging me at Goddess of Wisdom Coach, and letting me know what resonates with you the most. So our 3 approaches here, just to recap, is flow versus force, consciousness versus unconscious, and energy versus the mind. Choosing consciousness, choosing flow, choosing your energy to lead will start bringing back into balance and healing the wounded into the divine masculine and feminine. And when you do that, you will experience more ease and flow in your decision making, in your day-to-day, and ultimately creating the life that you desire and so deserve. I really hope you enjoyed this. Thank you so much for listening. Sending love and light to you.